off of there, please? I guess so.
No. I don't even know when I'm supposed to do it, actually.
When he walked in. That would have been perfect.
Okay, now you're live.
I call this Board of County Commissioners meeting to order on January 18th and recognize that we have 3 commissioners in house and we have Commissioner Wendling on Zoom via Zoom today. So we do have a quorum. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Commissioners, you've seen the agenda. What is your pleasure there?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We do have a couple of changes on here. We're going to remove public hearing item number 2, the P&Z request to agenda the amendment for the Mike Thompson Lagoon subdivision final plat. And also this morning, our treasurer is not well, and so he asked that we remove tab E as well. And those are the changes I have.
Mr. Chairman, do you want a motion to amend the agenda?
Please,
I would do that.
we have a second.
Yeah, I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Approval of the minutes from our January 4th meeting. What's your pleasure, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move that we accept the minutes from that meeting as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I can second.
Thank you. It's going to be a lot of lifting for you two.
Doc, you're not getting out of this, you know.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We also have our intergovernmental joint leadership meeting minutes. What is your pleasure there, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move that we accept the 1/6/22 intergovernmental joint leadership meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Attaboy.
And I knew that.
There he is. He's in action. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Tab B, acceptance of the bills. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'll make a motion. We approve the bills, which is the approval of the ELs, approval of monthly reports, approval of bonds, approval of ABH rebates, and approval of the hospital maintenance expenditures.
Thank you, Commissioner Wendling. We have a motion and I don't know, we might have worn him right out there. That might be all he has today. You sounding a little under the weather there, Doc. So don't overdo it, okay? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I would,
Second.
oh.
Go for it, Mary.
I will second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Toman. We have a
Mr.
motion and
Lloyd
a s-
deferred, but I felt kind of bad because I was sure that Doc was on the sunny beaches somewhere.
I know, yeah.
It's cloudy.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the bills?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Tab C, public hearing for planning and zoning. No, Mr. Bingham today.
No, Mr. Chairman, you just have me and Jim today.
Perfect. We got the A team in, so we're happy.
Thank you. All right, our first, we've got two public hearings today. Our first public hearing is a variance request from Mike Thompson for proposed lot 3 on Lagoon subdivision. Mike Thompson is working or is part of Schlumberger, and they are working on a parcel out at 45 Lagoon Road right now where the old Schlumberger buildings used to be. They're in the process of final platting this to subdivide it into 3 lots. The current zoning on the lots out there currently is I2 heavy industrial. The infrastructure that's on site and will service this site as they continue to go forward with this process is West Side Water and Sewer, City of Rock Springs for the water, Fire District Number 1, Rocky Mountain Power, and Dominion Energy.
No luck. Oh,
I can see it on her screen.
I can see it on my laptop. It's connected with the HDMI.
that's okay.
All
I
right,
think we all have it up, and so we're good.
okay. We'll go ahead and continue.
Thank you.
And we'll just,
Ta-da.
Ta-da.
technology, just having a little bit of relapse today, getting back into the swing of things.
Magic.
So, okay. Schlumberger is working with JFC to divide the property. As I've stated before, there are currently 6 existing buildings on this property. The lots range in size from about 5 acres up to 17.6 acres. Proposed lots 1 and 2 are accessible directly off of Lagoon Road, and proposed lot 3 would be accessed off of Lagoon Road as well, but would be by a private road located within said lot 3. This request for variance is to propose a new lot 3 frontage width that is a little bit different from what we require per our code regulations. Here's a copy of the latest final plat that we have. And down in the southwest corner, that's the lot 3 that we're referring to. As you can see, there's a little bit 80-foot wide strip that would be accessing right off of Lagoon Road. Here are the photos for the public notice and when it was posted. And per our Sweetwater County zoning regulations, section 5G in our setback requirements table, I2 heavy industrial zoned land has a requirement of 100 feet on the minimum lot frontage. That's why the request is being made here today. They're proposing the 80 feet. And there are 3 criteria that we go through for the variance process. The first being there's special circumstances or conditions fully described in the commission and board's findings, which are peculiar to the land for which the building and variance is sought and do not generally apply to land buildings in the neighborhood and have not resulted from any act or act of the application subsequent to the adoption of the zoning regulations. During the preliminary plat process, it was proposed to have this road be a private road called Lagoon Court to access this proposed lot 3. At this stage of the process, it was required to have 80 feet for the right of way per our regulations for a local street to be on an I2 zoned land within the growth management area. At this time, this was adhered to. They followed all of our recommendations and requirements at this time. Since then, they've talked about how there could possibly be concerns with ownership down the road, making sure that that private road runs with the property. So they've since come back and asked if they can just have the property absorb the road. It still will be private, but basically they're hoping today they can keep the 80-foot width and not go with the 100-foot width that is required per our regulations. Criteria number 2, for reasons set forth at the commission board's findings, the circumstances or conditions as such are the strict applications of provisions of Sweetwater County zoning resolution and would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land or building. The granting of the adjustment is necessary or reasonable use thereof, and the adjustment as granted as is the minimal adjustment and would accomplish this purpose. This proposed access to lot 3 would be private and would be maintained by the owner of lot 3 and would thus run with the property. The proposed frontage of 80 feet does meet the required standards for a local road on I-2 within the growth management area, which subsequently would only make the frontage to lot 3 20 feet less than the current 100 foot per our zoning regulation. So it's just a little bit off of what we would require currently. And our last criteria is the granting of this variance is in harmony with the general purpose and the intent of the zoning resolution and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. The proposed private road would be constructed to fire access code standards, and there would be ample room for access and the local private road if the proposed variance for 80 foot was approved. We put it out for public and agent comments. We got 2 back, the first being from Kinder Morgan. They do not have any facilities located in this area. And John Bunning Company, they're a neighbor just to the north and a little bit to the west, and they have no objections to this variance. And as a land use staff, we recommend approval. And last week at the P&Z board meeting, it was voted 5-0 for approval as well. And that's all I have on this hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Toomer? Doc, do you have anything? Okay. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Chairman.
Mhm.
As far as the fire apparatus, the 80 feet is plenty wide enough for access for fire apparatus. And if you're familiar with the lot, it's flat and the entire thing is gravelled. The entire lot. It was an oil-filled company, and it's just made for access. There should be no problems whatsoever as far as that width or the access from that side of the lot. So I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you.
That was going to be my question, like two-way traffic being heavy industrial, no issue. The road doesn't really end anywhere. It just kind of keeps going. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Very good. All right. We'll open this for public comment, public hearing. So if there's any comments on this, we are open for public comment. I don't see any comments. Nobody here in chambers and nobody online. We will close the public hearing. And I'll ask commissioners, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Wendling, Commissioner Wendling.
thank you. I'd like to make a motion. We approve resolution 22-01-ZEB0- or ZEB-0-01 for approval of a variance for minimum lot 3 width from section 5.G of the 2015 zoning resolution requested by Mike Thompson, Slumberjay.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to second that. I did attend the planning and zoning meeting as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't know which chairman wishes to sign as chairman, but the document has 2 chairmen on it.
Okay. Looks like we're all signing.
Yeah, but there's 2 chairmen.
Oh, there are. Me and Roy. All right.
So
Oh,
Roy can sign as chairman this
scratch
time.
mine out.
I would suggest we have the document correct.
Thanks for noticing that. We'll get that fixed one way or another.
Thank you.
All right, motion second, discussion. All those in favor of approving this resolution?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on.
All right, the next public hearing that we have today is a language amendment to our 2015 zoning resolution in section 4. Sweetwater Canyonland uses the applicants for this one. What we are doing with this notice of intent is updating our current fire regulations to be in accordance with what the state requires and updating it. It's something that has to be done every 3 years. And we need to get this done prior to the end of March and have everything go through. And I'll go through just briefly the review criteria that we have, and then I'll have Jim Zimmerman get up and speak on the details of exactly what's being changed on this. The first criteria we have, the language amendment is consistent and compatible with the current zoning resolution and the comprehensive plan. The purpose of this language amendment is to bring the Sweetwater County regulations in compliance with Wyoming state statute. The state of Wyoming has recently adopted the 2021 International Fire Code, and in order to keep home rule in Sweetwater County, we are required to adopt the state's minimum code requirements. Criteria number 2, the language amendment shall not adversely affect adjacent properties, communities, or the health and safety.
Just one sub job.
Welfare.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's embarrassing, Doc. Sorry.
Yeah, I hear you.
Man, oh man. Wait, I better check mine.
Sorry,
Okay.
Megan.
I'm good.
You're good. Or affect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Sweetwater County. These amendments will update the fire code regulations from the 2018 to the 2021 International Fire Code regulations to keep in compliance with the Wyoming state statutes. And this is the general area in section 21, or excuse me, section 4 of our regulations. Basically what we're doing here is updating any use where it has 2021 or 2018, updating it to 2021. Also, as you go through sections where code is being updated, different sections may apply. Same thing that happens in state statute. You just got to look through very carefully at that. And I don't know if you guys want me to go through this in detail. It's rather just
I have a question. Why are you putting 2021 instead of 22?
What the state has
Years?
adopted
Oh.
is 2021.
Okay.
So we're just updating to be in compliance with what they have currently updated.
So what happens?
Jim.
You have to go to the mic.
I want Doc to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Commissioner Tolman, what happens is it's a 3-year cycle. So it's the 18, it's the 21, it'll be the 24 when that eventually comes around. But what happens is the state starts their process
Oh.
to adopt the 2021, and they had, I don't know if this is COVID or what, but they had a hard time getting it through all the signatures. They only adopted it in September
Okay.
of 2021. And they have to give us 6 months to adopt it to keep jurisdiction. And so we started the process, started updating everything and started getting it in and getting it ready and updating the code and stuff. And here we are. We have the 45-day notice is what we're asking for. And so we're hoping to get it by the end of March, and then we'll be good to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Good. Megan, anything else?
I'll actually turn the time over to Jim Zimmerman to speak to the actual details, code wise, what's going to be updated as this is
Welcome
his
back, Jim.
purview.
Thank you. Chairman Smith, Commissioners, may I approach?
Please.
John, did you want one? Okay. So what I have there, the first sheets, I have the significant changes. Not a lot of changes, but a couple I wanted to point out to you. On the second sheet, we're looking at portable generators. So what's happening as we see the International Fire Code, all the codes actually, all the international codes are reactive. So in other words, once they see a technology come in or an issue or a problem, then they try to address it in the next cycle. And so what they're doing is they're behind, but they're trying to keep, active. So the portable generators is a new section. What we're seeing is now is we're seeing homes with portable generators, to back up everything. So that's new. The next one, the solar photovoltaic power systems, we're seeing that for rooftop and ground mounted for residential. So before, when we were, the code addressed the big solar farms like what we have out here on Route 352. Now they're honing it into now residential. More and more residential are getting these photovoltaic solar projects. So they've adopted that. And the last thing I wanted to mention is the fuel cell for vehicles. So now we're seeing electric vehicles and we're seeing the plug-ins at the homes. So the code now addresses that for R3 and R4. R3 is our standard residential home that you're going to see. That's an R3. That's going to be a single family residential. So we're seeing these plugins going into garages. And so we've got to know how to inspect them. And we've got to have code on that because we're going to see more and more of that happening. So they've added that. So these were a couple of things I just wanted to mention, but as an overall, this wasn't a huge change like in 2012 and 2006. There were huge changes in the code. That's not the case this year. It's minor changes, but I just wanted to bring up some of those new things. So feel free to look over that list. If you have any questions, I'm available, of course, at any time to any of the commissioners. But if you don't have any other questions, what the other things I've passed, do you have any other questions on the code?
What in the world is artificial combustible vegetation?
What's happening is now they're putting a lot of rooftop gardens. And what's happening is they'll mix in plastic. Plastics are really hard to put out. And so the plastics is the problem when it's artificial. So I have a tight inspection on artificial vegetation when I go into the schools for their annual inspection, because a lot of times they'll put up artificial trees, lighting, and things that they can't do that anymore. It's just extremely hard to put out that plastic once it catches on fire. So it's usually put in hallways or in classrooms where the kids need to get out. And now they're expanding that because people are doing these rooftop. This is an international code. So it's the same code used in Chicago and Detroit and Los Angeles. So, we're not those type of cities, but it's addressing rooftop gardens
Nice.
a lot.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Other questions?
Okay. The other things I gave you just while I had your ear was just to give you my year end for inspections. The next one is the year end for fire inspections. And what I've noticed, if you look at the history there, this is 2021. I've had 32 fire inspections this year. So what I've noticed is a downturn through this COVID time, a downturn on people building. I mean, I think that's safe to say. But and that breaks out all the inspections I've done and what type of inspections they are. And then if you look at the next sheet, this is my nuisance and zoning variances. Nuisance and zoning and analysis, which is my violations. And if you look at that, 2021, I had 77 violations. I mean, I'm looking back, that's records. That's a record year. So what we're seeing through these years of COVID is we're seeing less people doing new work and more people, if they're at home, creating violations. So they're putting more stuff in their yards and in their buildings and stuff than they did before. So just a pattern that I wanted to show you that while I was up here. Just wanted to touch on my other jobs. So,
Thank you. Thanks for doing the work.
yes, you're welcome. Any questions for me on any of that?
Questions, commissioners? Thank you. Anything else, Megan?
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Commissioners, then what is your pleasure with the notice of intent language amendments to the Sweetwater County zoning resolution section 4?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
so moved as presented.
thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? No discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And you're finished, just like that. All right. Perfect. Well, we will now open the floor up to county residents' concerns and comments, and we'd even take compliments if there were any. If we had some of those, that'd be nice. So floor is now open for county residents, the CCC.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Comments, concerns, compliments.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I wish to extend special thanks to our Chairman Smith and Clerk Lane for attending the Corporations Committee and providing testimony on redistricting. Whether they listened to you or not, I'm not sure, but anyway, thank you.
Happy to help. It was a good time.
Ditto.
No food. I do have to say, I left Cindy there at 7 o'clock. I was done. So I don't know how long it went, but I bailed and said, I'm out. So kudos to Cindy for staying. 1:30 to 7 was all I could handle. So anything from the public? Nobody online? No comments? Okay. Let's move right along then. Tab D, request approval to award a contract to the 2022 Community Services Block Grant Community Assessment. And Christina Marshall here for a presentation for us. Ms. Marshall, what do you have for us today?
Okay, hold on. All right, well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Sweetwater County was previously awarded a Community Services Block Grant to conduct a community assessment of Sweetwater County's needs and resources. So this is an important compliance requirement required every 3 years to qualify for this grant. And it is actually overseen by the Tripartite Board, which is a public advisory board. So the overall project goal is to identify both emerging and ongoing needs of economically insecure residents in the community. This is a very important part of the CSBG's ROMA process that stands for Results-Oriented Management and Accountability. And that's so that you can plan for and make strategic decisions about the use of that grant funding. The project will also identify community resources and partnerships, as well as determine significant public policy issues. So this RFP process included multiple steps. First, I advertised the public notice for 3 consecutive weeks. Proposals were accepted until January 7th, 2022. And then finally, there was a review committee of 4 individuals who looked at the proposals, and their scoring was due to me by January 12th. So the review committee received a total of 5 proposals by the deadline. Because this project is for professional services, there is not a mandatory low bid award. So in your packet, I've attached a lot of reading material if you wanted, but as a summary, There were 5 proposals. You can see on page, I guess, page 2 of the packet, the total costs. If you turn the page, you could see a tabulation of the average score by the 4 reviewers for the different criteria. I think it's important to note that the criteria was varied. There were 4 main categories. There was project-specific criteria comprised of the firm's past experience on similar projects, qualifications and experience of key staff. Next, there was a category of quality of the proposal. There were 3 subcategories in that. The scope of work was the proposal organized and developed, and the overall impression. Next, the proposal cost played an important factor. And then last, the ability to meet the schedule. So there were sub scores for each category that were weighted differently. They were totaled and then divided by 4. So I thought you'd find it interesting, the differences. So staff is based on the review committee, staff is recommending awarding the contract to Western States Learning Corporation, doing business as Align, who received the highest average score and was within the approved grant budget for the project. Finally, the results of this community assessment will be available at the end of June 2022. If you would like, we can have the consultant come here and present to you the results of this assessment. Also, I put this assessment on the county's website. A lot of agencies use this to procure additional grant funding. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Questions for Ms. Marcel? I have one. Have we done this before? When was the last time?
Mr. Chairman, yes. Based on every time we receive the community services block grant, we have to. There is one that's 3 years old and it is on the website.
Okay. Thank you.
It was not presented in person though. So
I would like to see it in person.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be super detailed, but being a people person and in my other side hustle job that I do, it'd be nice to see what resources are needed out there.
And Mr. Chairman, I did discuss this with Commissioner Lloyd, who's a member of the tripartite board, and there is funding in the budget. And so we will make that a priority to have it presented to you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions? Then what's your pleasure, my fellow commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move to approve and authorize the chairman to sign the Community Block Services Grant Community Assessment Contract to Western States Learning Corporation, DBA Align.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just want to note that I think it's Christina did a lot of time and effort into this, and I want to thank her for the project and thank her for the members of the 4 members of the tripartite board that came in and scored. I think having 4 eyes take a look and score is really important to make sure we have a quality product. And I think they did a great job. So thank you to them also.
Excellent. We'd love to hear that.
Thank you.
I don't like hearing, man, they didn't really do that good a job. So good. Glad that went well. Any other discussion? We have a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes. Thank you, Christina.
Okay,
Appreciate your work.
thank you.
Tab E has been removed and we'll move on to tab F. Pre-employment contract for the new sworn sheriff's office personnel. You presenting for us today?
Yeah.
Excellent. Come tell us a story.
So the sheriff's a little bit under the weather today, so
A lot of people are.
yeah,
It's a trend.
it's like a little trend. So the only item to discuss is the update for the signature page for the pre-employment contract that we've had in place for the last couple of years. Just indicating the new chairman. That's it.
Okay.
Pretty easy.
That is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Mr. De Leon, looks like you've reviewed this and have any issues at all?
Yeah, no changes to the actual body of the contract or anything, just the signature page.
Okay. Excellent. Do we have questions? No questions? Then what is your pleasure,
Mr.
Commissioner?
Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Wendling.
yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the signature page.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second discussion.
So this, if I may ask,
Yes.
is just to guarantee you get reimbursed if an employee doesn't follow through after you've paid for all of their training, right?
That's correct. It's a 3-year, so term of the contract is 3 years, so it's prorated depending on the time that the individual stays employed with the sheriff's office, sworn individuals only, but.
Thank you. Other questions? No, then what is your pleasure, Commissioners, on the pre-employment contract?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to need to,
You have Wendling and Tolman.
oh, thank you. You're right. I forgot we're in the discussion part. So all those in favor, it looks like we had all three. So this passes. Thank you.
Okay,
Tab F, thank you.
thank you.
I'll go back to sleep.
It's okay. I had the agenda right in front of me, so I saw it.
Excellent. Tab G, request to restaff vacant position in the sheriff's office. You going to come do that as well with us? And Mr. McLean? Not here yet, but do you need his help? We'll be pretty straightforward on this one. We've seen a few of these.
Yes, sir. I believe it's to replace a vacancy in the patrol division, a patrol deputy position.
Excellent. And the difference in salary, it looks as though we're going from a grade 17 step 1 to a 19 step 5.
That's correct. So human resources budgeted that at the highest seniority level for the patrol deputy position, and that's just for budgeting purposes.
So it may not necessarily be filled at that.
Correctly, more than likely, it generally is replaced with the grade 17, but
Excellent. Questions then? No questions?
you guys are easy this morning.
Yeah, stuff to do. Then what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move that we would approve the hiring of a patrol deputy as presented and have the chairman sign.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes as well. Very good.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you for your time. Tab H, COVID-19 Sweetwater County Guidance. Mr. McLean, what do you have for us today?
Chairman, County Commissioners, our favorite topic. Everyone's favorite topic, I guess. Just, I think, an update. I provided all of you with some numbers in terms of the COVID status in the county and some of the costs associated with that. But I think the more important thing is a couple months ago, we adapted the matrix for addressing and responding to those exposed and tested positive with COVID following the CDC recommendations. And today, we're in front of you is the new recommendations, essentially shortening the quarantine period to 5 days and making it a little easier to get folks back to work, whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated. And so just trying to keep pace with those changes and keep everybody healthy the best we can. One other thing I would mention and talking with Marty. As you remember, when this process started, masks were in short supply. There was kind of a scramble to accommodate healthcare, make them a priority with respect to masks. That is not the case today. We have plenty of surgical masks and N95 masks. And so one of the significant issues is, as you've seen over the last 2 months, the increased efficacy of surgical masks as opposed to cloth masks. And so folks returning to work, we have enough to be providing them with a 3-ply surgical mask, and have been doing that for the last couple of weeks. And purchasing has a good supply. I think the plan right now is they're just going to stock those and then supply them as needed, just like we would safety glasses or gloves or other essential safety items. It also helps in having kind of a uniform standard, as you know, with cloth masks. There's all different types and whatever. So we'll follow those recommendations. But if there's any questions regarding the change to the COVID-19 matrix, I'd be happy to entertain those at this time.
Any questions for Mr. McLean? I have a couple. Are we doing any testing here within the county?
No.
To send them off to the hospital or providers?
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you. And then is this, as much as you can, up to date to the CDC guidelines? Is that?
They are. Yeah. These are the current guidelines. Yeah.
They seem to
Although tomorrow, who knows?
be
Yeah.
always changing.
So
Good.
Yeah.
John, nothing illegal about this that you can see?
So I would just update the board that the Supreme Court did come back on the OSHA
Mhm.
ETS, indicated that that was not valid. So that particular issue won't be before the board in the near future. There is still hanging out there, of course, the federal contractor mandate, which was stayed but wasn't explicitly addressed by the Supreme Court. So that's the status on that front.
And then also the healthcare provider, if you accept Medicare, Medicaid, which would be our hospital.
Yep.
There is the vaccine or test mandate. So I guess that one would affect us some.
Mr. Chairman, back to your question regarding the testing, that's probably the largest challenge right now, as you know, because we have highly valid tests, doing nasal swabs and those things, and then a variety of rapid tests from supermarket variety to Instacare and other emergency care variety. So trying to find consistent, uniform testing in that regard is tough. There's some data concerning the high incidence of false negative results within the rapid tests. Of course, that's dangerous, obviously, because of you might potentially have it and then spreading it. Sounds like there's pretty good consistency in terms of the positive test being reliable. So I think that's positive, but that's going to remain a challenge, especially if there has to be increased testing, finding consistent, uniform, available, affordable testing if there needs to be some wide scale testing. But I think right now everybody's doing pretty well. And I think one of our benefits is, for the most part, maybe save for the detention facility, everybody's pretty well situated in offices. And so I think we're maintaining, we have a trickle. I think we had 6 on last Monday. But otherwise, I think we're doing okay. Hasn't affected operations just yet. Jason's been delivering meals inside the detention facility. So if you, we're getting a full service out of our sheriff administration.
Excellent. Good. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. McLean. Hey, Mr. McLean, what are our numbers currently looking like with COVID amongst our employees and quarantines? Are we seeing a plateau, a decrease, an increase? What are we seeing?
So in the report I provided you this morning, I think that what you're seeing is an uptick as you've seen other places just in the last 2 weeks. Since the start of the month, I think we've had 10, not as high as we were previously. Hopefully it doesn't go up too much more. It's been in little locations, so you might get 3 or 4 here, 3 or 4 here, that type of thing. So I think it's doing fine. Hasn't, other than some challenges with detention center, I think, but hasn't affected our ability to operate. And with the 5-day period, it's much easier to manage and get people back in a reasonable time frame to keep things open. And so far, everybody seems to be doing pretty well.
Well, thank you.
Great increase, but nothing like knocking on the door of 40.
No.
Back in September.
No, not even close. Thank you.
Good.
Knock on wood if you have any.
Any other questions or comments? And no action needs to be taken on this, just for informational purposes?
No, I think we need to adopt that to replace the other guide that we previously addressed, the other previous matrix.
Excellent. Then what's your pleasure, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move that we approve the accepted COVID the presented COVID guidelines as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Doc. Any discussion? All those in favor of adoption?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. McLean, for staying on top of that. It's the ever moving target, as we know, so much appreciated. On to tab I, and tell us a little bit about chapter 12 or chapter 2. Sorry, chapter 12 is my assisted living world. So that just flows
That's
right
where you're
out.
funny. Yeah, we know where your
Chapter
priorities are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, County Commissioners. In reviewing some of the policies, chapter 2 has to do with hiring practices. There were some references within here back at the time when there was a county chief administrative officer. Those have been removed. This mostly is putting forth the authority, which is statutory authority to hire, and referencing that issue, which we do, especially for the elected officials, when we appoint. So the authority is to appoint. It's a little bit of history on here. I don't know the exact date, but prior to say 2006, 2008, something like that, there was no specific authority for the county commissioners to appoint. And obviously it wasn't unreasonable for the county commissioners to plow roads and do other things. And so Sweetwater County, as well as some other counties, that hired some administrative staff and ultimately went back to the legislature to get that authority. 18.3.107 was added, which specifically gives the board the authority to appoint staff. This was an issue that I've been discussing with the county attorney's office for some time. One of the issues is about since the authority to appoint is with the board, that it would make sense to amend some of the process and have the board approve the appointments or sign the appointments or both. To be a little tighter with that, historically, once those positions were approved, then the department head would interview and they would make the appointment, but that statute has authority with the board. So we'll amend that process. So I think after our discussions last week, I know John discussed with some of the other county attorneys, civil attorneys, and folks around the state. And so I think that's an amendment that's not in here currently. I have some information we got last week. So I think that's an amendment that'll need to come back. It's just a minor change under section 3. Which specifically addresses the board's authority to appoint. The statute says the board may appoint one or more assistants or staff positions whose salaries should be established by the board or as may be necessary to properly administer the affairs of the board. Persons appointed to an assistant or staff position shall not perform any statutory duties delegated to other county officers. Cites 18.3.107. So the discussion was around whether that is something that can be delegated or not. And I think John agreed that it probably makes sense to create a flow of that comes back before the board to ratify that appointment, since the authority is with the board, not, and there's no clarity on that. So that'll be something I think next week, once we'll under section 3F, we'll add that some provision in for that to comply. The rest of the changes are really just updating those couple things that I mentioned earlier.
Thank you. Can I, in 3B, I'm a little confused there at the end of the wording, or maybe it didn't get struck. Upon consent from the board to restaff a vacant position, an elected official may appoint a staff replacement in accordance with county procedures, period. But then it goes on, and the elected official had previously.
Oh, yeah, I
Is that
think that
just-
didn't get struck. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
I think it's intended to, but yeah, just
Thank you.
Yep.
So action on this today?
I don't think it makes sense. We'll make that the change recommended by the county attorney's office, which will include these, and we'll address that with that in for the next week.
Perfect.
If there's any other concerns, I'll address those also. If there's questions from the board.
Mr. Chairman
Yes.
and Gary.
Hey, I didn't know we had a new county commissioner. I thought that was Barry White.
Nice. Hey, when you bring this chapter 2 back next meeting,
Yeah,
will you bring with it as a piece?
I didn't
Okay,
hear that
thanks.
last part, Doc.
Just there's just a little delay. Well, would you bring chapter 3 with you as well? The next
Absolutely.
chapter?
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
His voice is so deep, it's not carrying over the internet. Any other questions, comments? Great. Thanks for that work, Gary. It's quite a task. So we appreciate you doing that. Looks like we are scheduled for a break at 9:40. And we have Mr. Luthi at 10. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
maybe we could begin our liaison discussions since we have all of us present.
Is everyone all right with that? I mean, our break isn't scheduled for 15 more minutes, so we're okay with that. I would wholeheartedly agree. How about any dissension? Anybody not want to do that? Okay, good. I have our list of liaison appointments, and I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, commissioners, but I think that the tone of this discussion was to decide how we would like to go forward with liaison appointments as far as the meetings we attend, as opposed to either, I guess there's options. We can continue with the system we have where we have a commissioner assigned as a liaison. They attend all those meetings and they are the contact. We could step back a little bit and still have a liaison assigned. Maybe they don't attend those meetings, maybe on occasion or when invited if there's a need, or we could take even a further step back and not have liaisons assigned, but have send out requests for these different boards to come and present to us as a commission as a whole. Those are kind of the three discussions that I've thought about and had with some of you. So I'll open that up for discussion and thoughts on our liaison system going forward.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
my only comment would be instead of having two liaisons, maybe have a backup one, but have one take a lead in so that a department chairman or someone is not dealing with two of us,
Okay.
unless we're both doing it together.
Mr. Chairman, my thought on that is, if that, can I speak, Mr. Chairman? I guess.
Yes,
I should
please.
ask. Thank you. I think being involved with both sides of it, doing a 2-person and a 1-person, I think one person can handle it because the automatic default is that they can't get a hold of someone. They'll probably, unfortunately, call the chairman. But I think by having, even as a backup, it just increases our load unneeded, because really a lot of times it is just one of the two commissioners handling most of the business, to be honest with you. And so I think having one for our department heads is important. It would work. And as far as the other agencies go, I think, I think for some of those organizations, I think no matter what we decide, we have to make sure it's clear of how the expectations are changing, because I think there are a certain set of expectations that are already out there, whether they're fair or not. That's kind of what they're expecting. So I think we should work through that. But I think, I kind of like the idea of having them still come and present to us on a regular basis or a couple times a year. And that's something, especially the outside entities, but I've always encouraged my entities I was a liaison to do. I think it's important for them to know who to reach out to, and if there are concerns or questions, what commissioner they are reaching out to. So at least there is that point of contact and they can build a relationship. And I think part of that too is it not only lets us be informed of what's going on in the organization that we work with, but it also lets them feel like they have a relationship with someone here at the commission that they can reach out to if needed. And I would agree. I think we could leave it to the commissioners on how often they think they can go to meetings. I think we went to a couple a year, had conversation with the chairman, their chairman or their director or whoever you're working with, and let them know, hey, I'm available if you need me, or have conversation as needed. I think that covers it. And the other thing I want to throw out is something else I'd throw to Commissioner Smith is I think I'd like to see us cap commission assignments for no more than 2 years and have rotation at that point on those if we continue in a system like that, because I think it increases our knowledge as commissioners by seeing different areas and different entities. But I also think it also decreases complacency and things like that. But I also think it also lets us build new relationships with new people. And I've always said I'm not the public lands guy, but being involved in conservation district has significantly helped me in that area. So those are my thoughts, Chairman Smith.
Good. Excellent thoughts. Commissioner Wendling, what do you think?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
I think the conversation probably should continue, because I'd be interested to know what Commissioner Shanefield has to say as well, and that type of thing. The only thing that I want to caution us is that we don't get back in that habit that was with that prior commission, where the single liaison person was recognized and expected to supervise, and they basically ran those departments without other commissioner input. And that was the reason to go to two, for two reasons, primarily because then, first of all, it stops the he says, she says, when an issue goes on, when two commissioners might meet with the department or something. The second thing is that eliminates that idea that single liaison is the supervisor of that department and is expected to run it. So that's the one thing I just would caution and make sure it doesn't happen. And the best way to make that sure it doesn't happen is a clear understanding that, yeah, there's a liaison, but that person does not run the department. Any commissioner can visit with the department head, and that department head, if they wish to, can get a hold of any commissioner. So I caution I just caution that how that liaison position is being used. By definition, it's purely a conduit between the commission and the chairman of that board. So if it's used that way, or conduit between, in this case would be department heads, I'm mainly talking about where, where we as commissioners are not supervising that area, making all the decisions. I just caution that from occurring. That's why we went to two, so two commissioners could talk. If there were a decision, second of all, gave the department head had two people to contact if they couldn't get a hold of one or the other. But moving forward, however you as Mr. Chairman wish to do it with the other commissioners, I think having them the outside agencies come in other than the department chairs to report to us as a board, so we all know what they're doing, rather than just one of us know what they're doing, and that type of thing. I think it might be a good change. And if that's one this board wants to do, that's great. But, there are some board positions that don't get changed until the person goes off that board. I think those need to stay in place. And I also think there's some liaison positions that, they do need to change every 2 years. I think they should change at elections when possibility of a new person coming on and it's aligned with their specialties and that type of thing, and not going for more than 2 years is a good idea. But that means whichever ones, there's nobody, as long as nobody's lack of better words, excluded from moving, that's great. But if somebody thinks they're going to stay liaison just because they feel their expertise, I mean, I'll even use myself as example. I've been on fire because I've been a fireman before, but that does not mean that any one of you other commissioners shouldn't be the liaison to fire. I think you should, as well as I think any one of us should be a liaison to another area. So I don't, if we're going to make it a full rotation every 2 years, then a full rotation, whether it's departments or whether it's liaisons. So that's just my thoughts, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a thought to what Commissioner Wendling said. I do agree, and in fact, when I threw out the idea of the rotating the chairman, I would have to come off of library because that's something I've been on since the beginning. But I think as we talk about why we kind of put in that system, and Chairman, when Mr. Wendling was a chairman, was because we did have situations where we felt where folks were running departments. I think we could just, if we decide to move away from that, we could just make it very clear that it is a conduit. It is that. And honestly, the first 2 years I was the liaison for a department head, I had no clue I was their supervisor until the very last meeting of a term, and then we kind of got told that. So I just think whatever we do, I think making sure it's clear to the outside agencies and our department directors what that liaison's responsibility is, and what we know and we agree what it is the most important. So it's clarified in the duties to everyone.
Great, thank you. I think we need to make a distinction that we're really looking at three different things. So we're looking at liaisons to like the SEDC, Events Complex, Airport, Hospital. So those are one thing, perhaps one discussion. Then we have appointments to boards and whether you're the chair or not. So like telecom, joint waters, those things. And then there's the county departments as well. So I think probably each of those can be treated a little bit differently. And in my thinking of addressing this is the number of meetings that we attend, the time that we dedicate to some of these entities, and how much work it is, as well as on top of we've created some committees with budget and some other areas that we're leading, with Sixpenny or whatever. And so I think we've taken on as a board an awful lot. And so I really just wanted to open this up as discussion to see what the feeling is. Are we getting stretched a little thin? Are we not? I feel as though there are probably some areas where we have great staff and we could rely on them to do some of the things that we as a board are trying to do. So comments on that, kind of those three different areas.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think you're 100% right in some of the committees we said that we have not only great department heads, but other employees that could also serve on some of those committees and provide insight as needed. And also, I think we have, if anything, we have other resources in the community through some of the other entities, municipalities, and people that are maybe more knowledgeable in specific areas that we can use to help in those areas as resources for committees. So I think that is that's a great piece. And I would also agree that when we do look at the liaison work, it does break because it is different because what we do with the department head and then the outside agency, but then even Doc mentioned, I'm a member of the tripartite board. I'm not really the liaison. I am truly an elected member of an appointed member of that board. And so there are different ways to look at it. And I think, once again, just kind of having a uniform way to look at it's important, but I do think distinguishing what we're doing is a really good idea and lessening our load because you are right. You look at committees and sometimes I feel like I always volunteer. I like to help and end up on a lot of committees. And I think if we can disperse that a little bit differently, I think that could help us all be more effective. Because sometimes I think we end up getting caught up in the minutia of things and roles where other people, where our staff could be, and we end up not being able to put in the time in the other bigger projects we should be looking at.
Agree.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Well, I think what Commissioner Wendling said is very important because as far as us being a liaison, I think we do try to do as much as we can as far as coordinating with our liaisons. But I think it's very important that we do not act as a supervisor and authorize a department head or an entity to do something on behalf of this commission without the full approval of this commission.
Would agree with that. Yeah. I hope that wouldn't happen. I think there are examples of things that, questions that are being asked of us that don't require the whole commission, but are, just easily answered questions that we don't need to bring and say, let's take a vote on this. But certainly for staffing, budgeting, anything that's important like that, absolutely, that should be a whole commission decision. So I'd like to look at this. So the chair and committee appointments, like telecom, communities protecting the green or the joint waters, 6 Cent, SEDC, tripartite, and the Greater Divide Economic Coalition. Those of you who are on those are members of those. And so that's not something that we, really rotate or things like that. You're a member of that board. You're not assigned by this. So I think we leave that the same if everybody's all right with that. And then we look at the county departments as well as the liaison appointments. And let's start with liaison appointments first and say there, do you feel as though all of those meetings need to be every time they have a meeting, whether it's monthly, that the liaison should be at all of those meetings? Or do you feel as though there should be flexibility to attend meetings as needed? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Well, I think it's important to attend as much as you can, but that's why I brought Devin in for the airport last time. I think maybe quarterly or periodically, you need to have the entity come in and give a presentation so the whole commission is fully apprised of their activities. And that way it takes some of the pressure off of that liaison person to be fully informing everyone all the time. Good.
With 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 of those. Do you think that we could maybe break that out, say airport and, hospital, we want to hear from more often, but perhaps golden hour, young at heart, we, once a year kind of thing? Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, based on your budgetary commitment.
Sure, yeah. Yes, we'll hear from them all at budget time, won't we?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important that when they come and visit not during budget time.
Yes.
Because I think, they already mostly come at budget time. And we were joking about this last night at the library board meeting that, when you only go once a year, but when it's you're asking for money, it's a different direction. And, to be able to come in and hear the number of people that the library is affecting or whatever organization it is, or how many deliverable meals the senior centers are doing. That's really awesome to hear rather than the money request. And I think it gives us a better insight of what they're doing and helping us make decisions and knowing how we can support organizations.
Good point. Doc, any thoughts on that?
I thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners. What Mary and Roy are both saying is accurate. I like the idea of them coming in. I think hospital, airport, the joint powers boards could come in quarterly because we invest a lot of money in those, with the
Absolutely.
exception of the water board. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, with the exception of the joint waters board, they're self-sufficient, so that's questionable. But I think the joint boards, along with the hospital and even Southwest, let's just say those component units, possibly we could sort those out. It could come in quarterly. Outside agencies, i.e. Golden Hour, and those could come in, I would say 6 months in between, because we'll see them at budget and have them come in 6 months later. I'll guarantee that any of them, if they need money, will be in sooner or in between. So that might be a way to do that, so it's not so compelling on us and that type of thing. So that's just my thinking of pulling together both what Commissioner Tolman and Commissioner Lloyd are talking about, if that makes sense. Thank you.
It
Absolutely.
does. Thanks. I will just point out that if we do quarterly, wow, that sounds like a lot. That would be for us every 6th meeting. We would hear from the hospital, the airport. Is that? I think that's okay, because then I think we're having a 10-minute discussion, as opposed to if it's annually or even semi-annually, then it's more like a half hour, 45-minute kind of presentation. Do you think that's reasonable quarterly for the joint powers?
Mr.
Some
Chairman,
nodding heads. Yes.
I think that's reasonable, but at the same token, it wouldn't exactly have to be that 6th meeting. It could be the 5th, 6th, or 7th, and or 7th,
Mhm.
just so it's around that area of time, which would lessen our time commitment for that day, but spread them out a little bit.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good point.
Mr. Chairman,
Mhm.
I almost wonder if we could calendar it and say, hey, this
Absolutely.
organization is going to come the first meeting of this month, these 2 organizations and these 2 organizations,
100%.
this is when they're coming in. Then that way it's organized. People know when they're coming.
Yes. 100% agree. Yeah.
Well,
that's-
Mr. Chairman, on that same topic, though, I think we should ask the entities what time of the year would be best for them to come, because the hospital, at a certain time, they have certain reports they want to share. Conservation District has an annual report they could share after January, for example. So maybe reach out to them and ask them, we'd like to hear from you 2 times a year. Do you have a key time period that would be important for you to report to us?
Great. That is good as well. I like that. So then county departments, what are our thoughts there?
Mr. Chairman, one other thought with outside agencies and components.
Mhm.
That would allow any one of the 5 commissioners at their own schedule to attend any one of those outside agency board meetings at any point in time. Would it not?
Absolutely.
Or would you be okay with that, Mary?
Yeah. I've been going to other ones because I don't have a lot of liaisons, because I have all the federal cooperator meetings that I'm attending, but I'm still trying to reach out and learn about
Well,
ambulance and others.
Yeah, but you don't have a life.
A life?
You don't
Yeah,
have
I
a
feel
life.
like I'm kind of losing it. That's true.
I'm
it
just
is.
kidding. Just kidding, Mary.
Life
I
is
know how
here.
busy you are.
Okay, thank you. How about county departments here briefly, so we can have a break before Mr. Luthi is scheduled. Do we want 1 or 2 liaisons, contact persons per department? I've heard the discussion. I understand it. Do we want a main and a backup? Do we want just 1? Do we want 2 that are equal? Thoughts on that briefly?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think Commissioner Wendling kind of outlined it. I think it's good to have 1 main one. You have a backup person, and in any case, I don't think you should be meeting with one if there's an issue without another commissioner with you. So
Okay.
that's how I would clarify that.
So a primary and a backup, I don't know what to call it quite right, but a secondary, that doesn't sound good either, junior partner, whatever, whatever you want.
Alternate.
Alternate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like I lost and I got, I got invited anyway in case someone gets sick.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll just, I'm okay with however we do it, but if we're trying to find ways to make our time more effective and efficient, I really do think one is needed. And because as being the liaison and, currently I work with 3 department heads, I don't think I've ever really been in a position where I'm actually making decisions or being forced to make decisions that aren't in the board's, that would be not a board decision, because I usually just would then say, hey, we need to take that to the board. Or I've reached out to when Chairman Wendling was a chairman and said, hey, we have this concern. This is what's going on. So I'm okay with either way, but I think as we look to try to create efficiencies in our time and how we manage things, I personally think one is sufficient.
I'm kind of on board with that. I understand the thinking, but in reality, as I look at my 3 assignments here, I've really deferred to Doc and Roy in those and taken a back seat on all 3 of them. So I've been kept up to date and kind of discussions, but I've been very not involved with those as much as I could have been, or that the 2 of you have been. So it's kind of like you 2 are already one person already, and because I really have not done much with those. So I'd be in favor of one person, and then letting departments know that they're welcome to reach out to any one of us or the chair if that's if they feel like they need some further explanation or more help, or that their liaison can't. And then the liaison responsibility obviously is bringing to the board any decisions that need to be made as a whole, and trying to work through the things that don't need the whole board by themselves and with the department head.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, there's one other point. I mean, without naming someone, there could be a department chair who is tasked with several different things, and he's also tasked with 2 different liaisons.
True.
One for economic development, one for public lands and planning and zoning. And it's
A little messy.
maybe it works out. I don't know. It seems like it's kind of unfair to the department head to have, several entities he's reporting to.
Okay.
I don't know how you resolve it though.
We make one liaison for that department head, no matter what the responsibility, has just one liaison. Any other comments? Okay.
One other thing.
Yes.
Have
Go ahead.
Are you going to have time to visit with Lauren about this and get her input, or
Mhm.
how do you? Okay,
I've
very good.
visited with her a little bit about it, got her insight. and
Okay, good.
We're not too far off, but certainly I'll kind of run this by her as well, and then put out, I guess, our list for desired assignments amongst the board, and then we can have those assigned to next meeting, if that's all right. So what I'm hearing is that too many notes. Let's see. We're going to try to cap our assignments to 2 years with liaisons. We're going to try to reduce our leadership or serving on outside committees and involve our elected or department heads and staff more as we can without shunning our responsibilities. We're going to keep the committee and board appointments the same, since those are a little bit different. And then we'll attend meetings as much as possible as liaisons, still a expectation, but not a 100%, you have to be there every time, and still have the joint powers, and those entities visit us quarterly, except water. And then the others we will schedule depending upon their needs, whether it be semi-annually or annually. And then we'll also schedule those ahead of time, ask them when it's best to visit. And among departments, we'll go to one contact person and try to maintain liaison with the same department head as even if they have more than one responsibility, as I'm looking at the list here. Does that sound like what we've talked about? Am I making stuff up?
Thank you for asking for our input.
Oh,
Appreciate that. Maybe we can work amongst each other to figure out where we want to make changes.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman?
absolutely. Yes.
What was the thought about maybe make this new round for 3 years so that they change at elections by possibility of somebody new coming on and, and if they have some expertise, they can, be worked into that arena, or don't you see that as necessary?
I would say that we make it a maximum of 2 years, but it could be just 1 year so that it
Okay.
gives us flexibility. But if you've been on a particular assignment for 2 years, then it's probably time to rotate. So I'm handing off ambulance to Mary,
Hey,
because it's been like 6 years I've been doing that. So. Just kidding. All right, we need to take a break. We got Mr. Luthi in about 8 minutes, so please be back in your seats here just before 10 o'clock so we can have Mr. Luthi. We can respect his time. And with that, we're on break.
Good discussion.
I didn't hear a thank you.
Okay.
Call this meeting back to order, and we are grateful to have Randall Luthi with us today from the governor's office, and appreciate Mr. Luthi you taking the time to visit with us today as a county commission. And you're invited by Commissioner Tillman. So Commissioner Tillman, anything you'd like to address before Mr. Luthi?
Well, Mr. Luthi, you're our neighbor from Star Valley, but why don't you give a little bit of background and tell us what you do in the governor's office as energy policy advisor, and then lead into our update on the temporary suspension. We do have in the audience today, Steve Coyle? Gilly. Steve Gilly is, works with Black Butte Coal. So he came to hear what you had to say today also. So give us a little background and tell us what you do in the office. And one of the purposes of this meeting is to get a closer relationship with the governor's office on what's happening in our area, especially as it relates to energy. So go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman, and thank you for opportunity to do this, because I tell you, it is important. Sweetwater County is going to be where a lot of action is going to occur in the next few years. And you all know that, and we want to make sure that we're available to try and help you. As Commissioner mentioned, I am from Wyoming. I'm from Freedom, Wyoming, which is in Star Valley. Went to UW, both undergraduate and graduate school. I've worked for, but the white hair indicates that I'm, not exactly a kid. But I have worked for Senator Simpson. I've worked for the Department of the Interior a couple of times. And I was also in the state legislature for about 12 years. The last thing that I did in DC was I was actually working for an offshore lobbying group, which again, sounds a bit strange for someone from Wyoming. But let me tell you, there's far stranger things in DC than a Wyoming person working for offshore energy. So Governor Gordon offered me the opportunity to come back to Wyoming. I jumped on the chance. I've been here just about 2.5 years. And yeah, the title is Chief Energy Policy Advisor. So I attempt to help the governor as we try and figure out, what is the best way to move forward with our energy policy. I would point out that shortly after I got here, we had 2 coal bankruptcies. Then within about 8 months, the oil and gas market absolutely collapsed. COVID occurred. We went from about 34 rigs to 0. You might say I'm a little bit surprised I still have a job. But things are starting to work out. Things are looking up. We have 16 rigs as of yesterday operating in the state. And there's a lot of opportunity and we can get into that as we go forward. But first of all, commissioners, I was wondering if you might have just some general questions. I'll be happy to try and answer them.
I think generally we are anxious to hear about Jim Bridger and the ongoing battle and where things perhaps stand today. I mean, we read the articles and things like that, but and that's a great concern to us if Bridger were to close down any earlier than it's already scheduled. So what insight do you have for us there?
Right, and happy to do that. And the governor shares your concern. It's our goal that we don't shut down any coal-fired units before their time. In fact, we're looking at ways to try and extend them. And Jim Bridger just has kind of moved to the forefront because of a couple of reasons. Just a little bit of background, and you can doze off here for a few minutes if you already know it well, but just maybe to set the stage. Back in 2014, there was a state implementation plan approved by EPA that would require and this is dealing with regional haze. A regional haze is actually a set of guidelines that deals with particulate visual matter, as you can see from national parks and monuments. So what that means is the EPA was interested in reducing the amount of particulate matter that people could see as they looked out from the parks. We won't discuss that. Other than that, that's just the way it is. But this 2014 permit actually established the 4 units at Jim Bridger, all four would have to get a super duper, we call it SCR pollution equipment, which deals with nitric oxide and sulfur dioxide, and required Rocky Mountain Power to put that kind of equipment on all four units. Rocky Mountain Power put it on 3 and 4, and then they put some initial equipment on 1 and 2. Then back in 2019, they requested DEQ to look at an alternative compliance, meaning they thought they could reach the same visual standards and guidelines as the regional haze requirements have by doing so by a different way. And that was actually by reducing the amount that they were going to run the units 1 and 2. DEQ looked at that, they agreed. So in early 2020, we started working with EPA on revising that state implementation plan. EPA at that time said, great, both the regional level and at the national level. It goes through several several steps. And one of that is of course, it goes to the Federal Register for public comment. By that time, we had a change of administration, and this administration decided they didn't want to go any further with this, and that they would actually rather have the original 214 SIP be in place rather than the revised SIP. So what that means is we had word that, they weren't going to do this. I would say probably early summer, midsummer, but I would say it really doesn't matter. Because Rocky Mountain Power in no way could have put that SCR equipment on units 1 and 2 in the time that they had provided. And for unit 2, that was actually supposed to be installed by the end of last year. So that entailed us arguing with them saying, no, we just want you to revise, accept the revised SIP. It works. You got the scientific backing for it. They didn't make a decision on that. So we sent them that letter of intent to sue saying, EPA, you haven't made up your mind. Here's our 60-day letter as required by the Clean Air Act saying you got to make some kind of a decision, and we prefer you just go with the revised SIP. Near the end, and this would be last week or shortly before then, EPA advised us that they were not going to approve the state implementation plan. But in order to avoid that shutdown of Unit 2, the Clean Air Act allows the governor to put in a suspension order for a period of 4 months. EPA could disapprove that suspension order. We don't think they will because we think it complies completely with the Clean Air Act. It's a period of time. There was an economic and employment study conducted by UW professor Tim Considine to support the need to keep that unit open. So we think we have the background required by the Clean Air Act that EPA shouldn't challenge that. And let me stay right up front. I have no indication that they're going to challenge it. And even if they did, we feel pretty comfortable. So this gives us 4 months, we think, to try and figure out if there's a different solution. And that's what's being considered right now. What are some different solutions? The governor, it's debatable if the governor could try another 4-month suspension order, but frankly, we would like to get a more permanent solution rather than go that route. It appears, and we're not positive of this, but it appears that EPA would be okay with units 1 and 2 being converted to natural gas. You probably know that Rocky Mountain Power actually put that in their integrated resource plan that they filed last summer, saying that's their plan of where they would go. So we're taking a closer look at that. One of the reasons we aren't all that excited about that is because it does shut down a coal-fired unit before it normally would. And as you all know, if you shut down a coal-fired unit, you also affect the coal mine. And so that's been a major part of our considerations and deliberations. So I'd say as of today, we're still trying to see if there's some kind of a road that we can reach. We've got a little bit of time to do that. And so I would also be ready for questions if you, any of the commissioners would have any.
Questions, commissioners?
Yes. Mr. Luthi, I sent you a letter prepared by the commissioners under Commissioner Johnson and we at that time had a natural resource person on staff, Mark Cott, June 2019. We just wanted you to have that because of the impacts of coal. And we can try to get updated figures from 2019 to show the impacts to Sweetwater County if we lose our coal production.
Oh, that would be extremely helpful because we
I did send that to you. Did you get
Yep.
it on email?
I believe so. I was just going
Okay.
to check and make sure. I think I actually read it, you know, but the old mind is a little senile sometimes, but I'll pull it out again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we appreciate you sending us the actual order for the temporary emergency suspension. I guess our main concern is what can we do as a county to be proactive to assist the governor to keep this operation going?
Right. One is that we know you're very interested in it. And the commissioner, particularly Commissioner Tillman, thank you for your letting us know that there is such an interest. And I will commit to you that you will be more involved than directly involved than in the past. I'll make sure you're on any letters that go out so the commissioners are up to speed. Should we, and I say, you know, should we is a big term, reach an agreement, I'd certainly like to discuss it with you and get your thoughts and see if we can't make that work. Should we do that? But it's just too early to say at this time.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out a couple other things to you. You're totally aware of this, but now the BLM has asked for sage grouse, total opening up the scoping and everything on the sage grouse, and they're doing it under two EISs, one for sage grouse focal areas and the other one for sage grouse plan, which was done in 2015 and 19. I'm sure you are aware of it. The second issue is the oil and gas leasing. Yes, okay, so they have had to open up oil and gas leasing. Then BLM pulls 264 parcels due to sage grouse issues or concerns. So really, the Biden administration is not complying even with the orders to be acting legally, and it's very disturbing as it affects our energy industry in this county and this state. I know you're totally aware of that, but I just wanted to point those two things out.
Commissioner, I appreciate that once again. As you might guess, it drives us crazy as well. You know, our sage, we have the largest stable population of sage grouse basically in the world. And the fact that we have worked so closely with our industries, oil and gas in particular, to make sure we have a stable population. So we find it very frustrating that the federal government just keeps coming back saying, you got to do more, you got to do something different, when we believe we have done the right thing and we really just should be left alone and be able to continue. The oil and gas leases was a result of President Biden's executive order, you know, stopping all oil and gas leases. We now have the first quarter is likely to be announced. I would say probably sometime this month is what we're understanding, but that's for 2021. So we went a full year without any oil and gas leases on federal lands, meaning we didn't get any bonus bids money. The companies were unable to plan ahead because they weren't sure of what leases would be offered. And commissioners, you mentioned out, even that sale that we expect to have hit the books here pretty soon is still only about half the parcels that were nominated and considered. And we've got to get that sage grouse issue behind us. So the governor's committed to doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're heavily involved as cooperator on all of these federal plans and projects. So I just want you to, I know you're aware of that probably, but we spend hundreds of hours in those meetings defending
Absolutely.
multiple use in our local economies and our custom and culture.
Mr. Luthi, what's the time frame with this the 4-month moratorium, I guess you'd say? And then what has to happen next? How quickly does it move? Trying to resolve.
And this is where it gets a little unclear. So, and I don't mean to sound evasive, but the 4-month time period would end about the 1st of May. So that one you keep in mind. Say we do reach some kind of an agreement, then we've got to figure out how to do the revisions within that 4-month period, or some other alternative means, either, all of this is, there's also litigation going on behind all this. And so there might be the possibility that the court would grant a stay to keep everything as is until the period occurs. Again, there are a lot of moving parts. I just don't have a lot of answers for you right at the moment, other than we've kept it open so far.
So far, so good. Are there any deadlines along this way in this 4 months that need to be met, or is it just kind of one step at a time?
It'd be one step at a time, sir.
Thanks. Other questions?
I guess the concern is if this county needs to intervene or do some action regarding the court litigation, that we do have our Deputy County Attorney, John DeLeon, in the room with us. And we would like to know, if there's an opportunity, or if that would be helpful, or any advice you might have along those lines.
Appreciate that, Commissioner. And I tell you what I'll do is ask our AG rep that's working on this.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. And
Absolutely.
These issues are, they're crucial to our county. It's do or die.
We understand. If you don't mind, I'd just take one more minute as we move forward.
You have 10 more minutes.
Again, I mentioned Sweetwater County is so important to what may or may not happen in the state of Wyoming. But you have the Rock Springs uplift, which is just a world premier site for possible CO2 storage. And so as the infrastructure bill that was passed by the federal government actually provides billions of dollars for projects that might include some CO2 storage projects as well. We want to make sure that Wyoming is considered for those. We also want to make sure that Wyoming is considered for some of these carbon capture projects, 2 of which need to, under the federal law, need to go on a coal-fired unit. And what state would be better suited than Wyoming to have one of those units? So I will attempt to keep you all posted on that as we move forward as well. Right now, we're going to try and use some of that funds under ARPA, and the legislature at this moment will be deciding what funds will be available that we can use that way. So keep posted, talk to your legislators, whatever you can do.
Thank you so much for your time. And we would love to welcome you back anytime you feel like it's an important update that you'd like to provide to our commission. Please let us know.
Will do, and I hope at some time I come in person.
That would be wonderful.
I would look forward to it.
Steve, did you have any questions or anything you want? No? Okay. Mr. Luther, yes, thank you. Appreciate your time very much. And please do keep us posted. We will do what we can to look out for our residents here in Sweetwater County and appreciate what you're doing as well. So, and the governor. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate all your work that you do in Sweetwater. Again, Sweetwater is such a fascinating and, it's kind of a microcosm of Wyoming. And so as Sweetwater goes, often goes Wyoming. Thank you.
We have our assessor on Zoom also. I don't know if he would have any questions for you. He's going to be closely watching to see what happens with our money.
I don't have any questions at this point. I think the commission beat me to all the questions that I had, but I'm very, very interested in the carbon capture, the CO2 projects that may be coming our way. I would just like to be in the loop as well as far as any information that's coming. That would be fantastic.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
We are involved in these discussions, Mr. Luthy. We are talking about carbon capture projects as well as storage, CO2 storage. So yes, we are trying to stay informed at least. I don't know how we can ever get ahead of the game, but we're trying very hard to at least know what's coming down the pipe.
Understood. Thank you, commissioners.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Very good. We have completed our our liaison discussions. So tab M, our COLA discussion. And We have obviously been some number of years since we've been able to increase salaries here at the county level. And so today's discussion is to look at that. And as we work towards our budget, what can we do? What can't we do? What would we like to do as far as increases in salaries go? So Commissioner Wendling or Commissioner Lloyd, do we have thoughts at all?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, as we know, it's been 3 years, I believe, since COLA for our people. And we know that cost of living, if we just follow the Social Security end of it, has been between 1 to 1.5% a year over the past each year over the past 3 years. And then, of course, this last year was an incredible year that the government indicated cost of living has made a huge jump. And of course, they started out at 5.9% and then readjusted 6.2. So just, I don't know how mathematically that all comes out, but almost nearly 10% puts our people behind. Now, I know we, not just too long ago, took a look at how we compared competitively for salaries and that, and we came out pretty good. We set ourselves at about I'll say 70-75% level. So I know we made some adjustments, but there were people that were at a good level that didn't get adjustments. So when I take a look at health insurance that we have for our people and that type of thing, that's just one of the benefits that helps our people. But I truly believe the one thing we can do that if people are valuable to us, if our employees are truly valuable to us, and the work they're doing is what's expected, and it's important to the county to retain those people and keep them with us so they don't go to other businesses. Cost of living raise, which impacts their planning for the future, probably is the best investment that we can look at. So I strongly support a COLA for our employees. I think it's just a matter of what that percentage will be and that type of thing. I think Gary, I see Gary sitting there, and I believe each percent would be about 235,000. Gary, that's what it was a while back. I don't know what it is now.
That's probably a good idea. Let's turn the floor over to Gary McLean to give us some numbers and idea of what impact our decisions would have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, County Commissioners. As Commissioner Wendling pointed out, we had a while back reviewed some salaries. As you know, what's I think caused the issue, and we've all realized it at the pump and selling houses and buying stuff at Home Depot, that cost of materials, especially transportation, has increased significantly. What I sent all of you last week was the data for Southwest Wyoming and the state of Wyoming from the Economic Analysis Division, which shows the cost of living realized in this part of Wyoming as well as in the state of Wyoming. Some notable figures you'll see in that analysis: transportation, 23.3%, recreation, personal carry percent, housing, 5.5%. The all items statewide is 7.7%. The regional inflation rate, again, this is for the second quarter of 2021. You get the second quarter and fourth quarter. We should get the fourth quarter data here in the next month or so. But for the second quarter of 2021, for Southwest Wyoming is 8.9%. obviously affected significantly by the costs of fuel and increasing transportation costs. One of the significant components, and which is why we track this over time, and I submitted to you a graph which we update every year. I started this back in '98, just to see if a person made $30,000 in 1998 and their salary increased with the cost of living that actually existed at that time, or their salary increased with the what it actually was at the county. And you can see kind of the where those two lines paralleled fairly closely, and more recently started to depart. I presented that information both on a Southwest Wyoming level as well as a statewide level. And this is a real issue, right? Because if it becomes more expensive and you're making the same amount of money, your buying power in the economy becomes less. So what you could buy as a bag of goods today is less than what it would be tomorrow. So one of the things that complicates this, which is why I just handed out, and Doc, you should have this by email also. It's a history of cost of living increases. And that's also reflected on the graph, but this is just a printout so that you could see. And on that graph, you see there were some years where there were bonus payments made. So from an employee standpoint, in some years, it was the buying power remained competitive or equal, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. What happens over time, though, obviously, is when you're recruiting, you're not adjusting your pay scale with a bonus. And so those levels at which you would recruit people remain at those lower levels. So the one-time bonus payments that you see indicated on there, while they help maintain some degree to offset costs for existing employees, doesn't do much in terms of recruiting new employees. Over time, this happened with the state back in the early 90s. What happens over time is you get to a point where you're no longer competitive and you have to make a huge jump in order to make those changes to be competitive. Notwithstanding those one-time bonuses, if you look out at the right of those graphs, that gap would represent that. How much that would be. So I think that's helpful in terms of tracking, where we're at relative to the actual cost of living. This is what was realized in the market. As you know, there's a lag. So we're collecting data that's actually last year's data. So as you know, it hasn't gone down any, it's continued to grow. And so those concerns remain very valid. Also, as a frame of reference, I think I sent you in the email, you're all in with the positions that we have. If you estimated around $200,000 per percent, that's total cost would be fairly reasonable. I think that's what I sent you in your email. And then that should give us a good budget number. As we go through the effects of the early retirement program, the budget process will continue to refine that. But I think for planning purposes right now, that'll be accurate. Certainly cost of living increases to salary affect employment taxes, retirement. And so it's not just the cost of the increase to salary, but also the corresponding increases. And so with that, I would entertain any questions about any of the data, just to help kind of frame that discussion for everyone.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. McLean? None? Did a good job then. All right. Where would you like to start this discussion? What are the thoughts of this commission as far as COLAs go? We heard Doc in support of, without a specific number. Mary?
Yeah. I'm not opposed to our employees receiving a raise or COLA or whatever we can afford, but I am still very concerned, especially when we're looking at Jim Bridger may be shutting down 2 units sooner than expected. If our assessed valuation goes down and our available money in this county goes down, and we offer COLAs and we are having to look at reduction in force, I just think we have to be cautious. Maybe a one-time bonus or something would be better, because once you offer a percentage increase, that follows us forever. And I know it helps our employees, but it doesn't help us. And we're trying to meet the budget and trying to keep this county afloat. And I think we're going to hit some hard times, maybe sooner rather than later. So I just say we need to take some caution. The airport board did agree to give their staff a COLA, but it was subject to what their budget was, anywhere from 3 to 5%. They were looking at that. Nationally, I've read that 1.5% COLA would just barely get you at your current status quo. It wouldn't be giving you a raise. So I understand the issues, but long term, I want to see this county continue to provide the services and to our constituents that they have come to expect, and with less and less money. I know it shouldn't be on the backs of our employees, but I think we have to be really cautious in how we reward them so that it can be sustainable for more than today.
Thank you. Commissioner Lloyd, any
Yeah,
comments?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think a couple things. I think one of the things that are very evident that we've done well in the county is becoming more efficient. And you can see that in the numbers. When you look at 2010, we had around 328, 338 full-time employees. I'm giving it approximate. And we're now down to like 258, as I think, full-time employees, if I remember right. And I know those numbers, I'm quoting those off the top of my head, so I'm sure I'm off a little bit. But we've done a good job of becoming efficient. And what's happened with that is we've asked our employees to do more with less. And in a way, we've actually asked some of our employees to become educated in new areas, expand their skill sets. And honestly, as we recruit people, it's essential to be able to hire, and hire the most qualified and the best people we can, because the reason we've been able to decrease our number of employees is because of our abilities to do that. I think it's hard to come up with a COLA number right now until we have the final numbers for the budget. I do see where Commissioner Toman's coming from, but one of the things I think that's important to look at is I ran a nonprofit for a lot of years, and I didn't give a lot of raises. I'll be honest. I was really, I was a bonus guy, and I was a bonus guy because my business was really dictated by Medicaid payments, and we can never predict the future. And so we would give a lot of employees, but what that created was a gap. And what one of the things that Mr. McLean said was, where you're seeing some of this is where we would not go with a COLA. You would see us have to do, when we were doing a cost analysis salaries, there were some areas where we had to do a large jump because the gap was created because of lack of COLAs being given. So I think we have to be cognizant of that, because if we don't look at some COLAs on occasion, it creates that gap. And then we have to eventually give a larger sum. And so I for one, advocate some level of COLA for our employees, and what that would have to be determined on budget. But I do think it's important that as we go through the budget process, we put that in front of some of the discussions rather than behind all the other entities, because I think it's important that we make sure we're taking care of those folks before before we look at some of the outside entities. I think that's an important thing to look at. So that's my opinion for what it's worth, Mr. Chairman Smith.
Thank you. I will also agree with that I feel as though a COLA is important. And I think that we need to do the plugging in first and say, this is what we're going to do for our employees, and then balance the budget from there going down. I would like to see something, dollar wise, number wise, I don't know exactly, but in my mind, I would not mind or would recommend something like a 5% this year and a 5% next year to try to get us up to something on par with the rest of the world and how expensive things have become. And it is difficult to see the future. We don't know what's out there with Bridger or whatever's going on, but I do believe that we really need to do our best to take care of the employees who are here, who have been here, and encourage them to stay here. We can't do it without them, that's for sure. And as you've said, Roy, we've asked them to do an awful lot more. And I do feel that the bonuses, I've done both bonuses and raises, and I think over time that bonus kind of comes and goes, but it's not sustainable for your family, for where you're living and what's going on. So those are my thoughts. I'd like to see I don't know about substantial, but a meaningful COLA this year and another one next year as well would be my thoughts. Doc, any comments, any more comments that you'd like to make?
Oh, didn't throw a number out there, but it's amazing. I was thinking between 5 and 6% this year, but I also agree with you. We need to look at something for next year. So I very much support a 5% this year and a 5% next year, but also I do not. I think we need to plug it in and then start working with the budget. We got to figure out what capital is, and then go through with the component units, and then go through with outside agencies and that type of thing. So I think as we move forward, we got to. I could support if we're going to strongly commit to next year, additional COLA, I'd go 5 and 5. But if we don't want to, then I'd go 6 at least this year. But anyhow, that's where I'm at. I've seen these employees for the years I've worked here. I've seen commissioners get 20-25% increase in their pay. I've watched percentages for department heads, and doesn't mean anybody doesn't deserve it, but I've also watched our other employees in the trenches lag behind. And I guess where I'm at is this may be the year to fix it if we have to work with Christina and figure out how we can use some ARPA money to invest into our people, especially if we're not going to use it to invest in capital. We need to invest in our people, and it needs to come ahead of everything else. So that's where I'm at, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for any questions, but I strongly support a 5 and 5 or 6 this year by itself.
Thank you. And human capital, I agree, is very important. Mr. Davis, come make some comments for us.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I hadn't planned on speaking today, but since you were talking about the valuation, I thought I would come and just give you some general numbers. We've got 3/4 of the data. I sent you a spreadsheet late last week. Right now, our mineral value is 102% through 9 months. That's what it was the year before. So we are ahead of schedule. Okay, the budget, the locally assessed number, along with the mineral values, are going to go up. Now, this stuff can turn on a heartbeat. So I don't want to caution you that the valuation is going to go up enough where it's going to solve all your problems. However, I could easily see somewhere between $300 and $350 million worth of increased valuation from last year to this year. Now, Senate File 60 with the monthly collections throws the cash flow part of that kind of up in the air just a little bit until that gets settled. But as far as the assessed valuation, you are going to have more money or more value this year than you had in prior years. Now, the minerals are up, but along with that, so is the locally assessed numbers. We have seen, as Mr. McLean had mentioned, that costs have gone up for all kinds of lumber, all kinds of building materials, those kinds of things. Well, those also affect how I value properties for tax purposes. We used a cost method, and those costs are going up, and I think our local multiplier went up as well. So you are going to have more locally assessed money than you had in the past. And the mineral values, if they continue the way they are right now, should be up a little bit as well. So again, all estimates, but I think the number I have on my spreadsheet right now is about 350 million. And that's without any increase in locally assessed numbers. So I don't think it's going down, just to ease your mind a little bit. How far up and how the cash comes in when those taxes are actually collected at the Department of Revenue, we have to wait and see still.
Do you have an idea? I know with Senate File 60, estimate of what that means. So if we have an increase in valuation, 350 million, what does that mean dollar wise to us collections?
The 350 million is all in minerals. So that mineral increase versus with what we had in the prior year, that second installment, and then all of the production for this year is part of that pot of money that's distributed out starting in 2023 for the 12 and a half years after that. So that's a delayed payment. You'll actually see the first payment of that in December of 2023. And I think the numbers we were using were like $1.3 million or $1.4 million for that amount. So it is additional money coming in, but it's delayed. It was part of Senate File 60, so it's not going to be around for a little while, but it is coming. But the other part of that is the locally assessed stuff is still collected on the same schedule that it was before. Big payment in November, big payment in the following May. And that big payment in the following May is still going to be there, but that locally assessed number is going up. So that payment will get substantially bigger as well. So I think we're going to be okay as far as valuation is concerned, but I just wanted to make sure you guys weren't in the opinion that the valuation was going to go down again. I don't believe that's the case. If nothing else, it's going to increase. Now, my numbers are skewed and they are estimates. I did the math to see how good I was on my estimates this morning in case I had to speak. And the oil value, I was off 19% because I don't think anybody could have predicted oil going to $80 a barrel. But natural gas did go up and I was off about 3 or 4% there. So, and I was on the low end. So we are higher than what we had expected. So just keep that in mind.
Excellent. That's great information. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Gary.
Two things, just to follow up on this. Number one is just bear in mind that as we look at these options, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. So if we're not sure about the timing of the revenues, we could do a cost of living and a bonus or some kind that don't have to be mutually exclusive. The second thing is that we're going to be working on the budget. The initial budget model is always zero. That's sort of the baseline model. So the as is. If the commission would like to have some other scenarios, then we'll run those scenarios. I generally do at least a 1 because then it's just multiplication from there. But if you have something in mind, if we'd like to look at a 5 or whatever, then I can go ahead and run that. As you know, the vast majority of our budget's in people. Brenda's been working with the department heads and trying to get that refined already. So we should have those numbers shortly. If we want to look at some models, I'd be happy to work on those so we can get, some refined numbers of what that means going forward. I think historically the issue is we always talk about this in June where we've spent all the money and it's kind of an academic decision at this point. So yeah, what happened? So anyway, just to let you know, there's some consideration as far as the budget and if you have some guidance for us, we'd be happy to do that. But the 0% budget, the as is budget, baseline budget is very close from the personnel cost standpoint, which for most of us is the vast majority of our budget. So if you have some other recommendations, we'll be happy to bring that forward also.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I know Gary sat down, but I'd like to have him work up a 5% and then a 6%.
That good, Gary?
Sure.
He's shaking his head saying, sure.
All right, thank you.
Mary?
Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
I'd say maybe as high as a 3%, maybe do a 3%. But I think we have to be cautious. I don't think we can be making promises for next year. It could be a whole new commission. So we're restricted to what we can do this year. I don't see us going out doing 2 COLAs over the middle of an election.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Good discussion. I asked Lauren for her comments. She hasn't come back to me yet. She was emailing about other stuff. Okay, so Gary, if you can work us up some numbers, I guess, then we can, I'd very much like to see us plug whatever we decide on into our early budget and then working backwards from there. Lauren says she supports COLA 100% and believes that we need to take care of our employees first. So she wants a 100% COLA, apparently. Well, that's a lot, but I don't think I can agree with that. But no, that's not what she said. A
Well,
COLA,
Mr.
100%.
Chairman, I agree they're worth 100%, but
Let's go with the 100% COLA.
yeah, our employees are worth 100%, but you're right. I don't think we can go that far.
That'd be dangerous.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you, Gary, and appreciate that. And we will, if we have that at the next meeting, or send it out email if you have it before then, that'd be great. Excellent. We'll continue that discussion.
Thanks, Gary.
Very good. We are scheduled for a break and then commissioner comments and reports. So is breaking still good? Would we like a break? Okay. We'll be back at 11 o'clock then. So about 12, 13-minute break. Call our meeting back to order, and we are on to commissioner comments, and starting with the Commissioner Lloyd. What do you got for us?
All right, thank you, Chairman Smith. First of all, I want to, from across the Zoom, hope Doc to feel better. It sounds pretty rough today, and there's a lot of crazy stuff going around. So I hope Doc feels better. But a couple liaison stuff, pieces of information. There's a conservation district meeting I was unable to attend because we had a intergovernmental meeting that night, and I also wanted to stop at Larry Lloyd's going away before that meeting. So I wasn't able to attend, but I am talking with Karen, and they are going to be coming to present to us in the next while, in the next short period of time, to give us an update on some of the Bitter Creek and other stuff going, Bitter Creek Watershed Project, and some of the other information going on at the Conservation District. Want to thank Jeff and Cindy for representing us at the Corporations Committee. It sounds like maybe there's a really good medium out there that everyone can live with. Maybe not the greatest, but much improved than what we thought it was going in. So I appreciate their work for advocating for us. And also, I saw Senator Coe's name involved and some of the other people that were advocating for us and our that districting. So I just thank them all. Met with Christina on mostly ARPA funds. She is going to be reaching out to individual commissioners just to have visits to kind of update where we're at before she makes a bigger presentation. But we talked about ARPA funds, and then we also spent some time talking about tripartite board and specifically what we approved today with the contracts for the community needs assessment. I did attend Larry Lloyd's going away retirement. It was well attended, and it was fun to give Larry a hard time and remind him I was the better Lloyd one last time before he moved on from the county. So,
Amen.
And no, we're not related, but we do share the same last name. I'm often asked that question. So, but thanks to Larry, in all honesty, he did a great job, really grew and developed the events complex. But with that being said, I also had a chance to meet with Candy about the future of the events complex, some of her visions and things going on, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for the events complex. And I wish Candy the best of luck, and know she'll do a great job. I've continued to work on the committee looking at county fire. We'll actually meet again today, later this afternoon. I think the committee's doing really good work and being very diligent in talking to shareholders, stakeholders, and other people interested in listening to what's going on. So I'm excited about that. Had the opportunity to meet yesterday with Jim Walmsley. We talked ambulance, 911 call center, and also talked a little fire throughout the county and some of his thoughts throughout the future of fire. And then I am getting ready to start our joint communication contract task force. I have got who's going to be the representatives from Rock Springs. As soon as I have the representatives from Green River, we will start going into that committee and taking a look at that contract. Attended library last night. Probably the most exciting thing is I can now share who the new director is, because they did finally make the formal announcement. But Lindsay Travis will be stepping up from her assistant director position and moving forward. And I can say I've known Lindsay a long time personally through she actually was an employee for me at one point in time, and a very talented individual. And I think she's really going to move forward. I think we've often talked about Library Director Grubb being kind of very innovative and efficient and really looking outside the box. And I think she's going to continue that tradition. And I'll send it out to the commissioners, but just their monthly programs that they have going on at the library really are fitting for people of all ages and are very integrated into the community, and they do a great job. And I think that will continue to move forward with Lindsay's guidance. A couple pieces of information I think I want to throw out there is I'm going to go back to trying to have a little bit of office hours. So if people need me, they can reach out to me. But I'll be in the office on the 19th and the 26th at 3:15 if anyone needs me. I'm also going to be have some new coffee with the commissioners, as I like to call them, be in Green River on the make sure I have my date right, because I can't read my own writing sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, that would be on the 8th in Green River at 8:15 at Cold Turn Coffee. And on the And then again on the 22nd, in Rock Springs at Coltrane Coffee. And that's just an opportunity for constituents to come visit with me in an informal place. And then one quick side note, had the opportunity to enjoy lunch with former Treasurer Rob Slaughter last week. Good catching up with Rob and seeing how he's doing. And I thought he would miss this place, but I don't think he does as much as he thought he would. But he does send his best. And then the last quick comment, it's just a clarification of some comments I made at the last meeting for financial planning when I talked about evaluating departments and things like that. And I had mentioned a couple specific departments. But to be honest, I think we could take a look at a lot of departments outside of really elected officials because that's their job. And there's a little bit more different there but I think as we effectively look at things, I think we can be taking an effective look at all our departments and not just for the reason of cutting, but doing an analysis of a lot of our areas to determine if there's things we could be doing differently, to determine if there's things we could change in how we do. I also believe there are some departments that may not have the manpower to meet what they need to do at some point because of all our VSP agreements. And so as I talk about taking a look and being critical of departments, I don't want to isolate any. And I want to reiterate, I think the work that we do is important, but I think we need to evaluate things for multiple reasons and not just the cut reason. And I think, that's always part of it, but, just taking a look and evaluating what we do. It's what we do in business. When you run a business, you're constantly taking a look at what's going on. And I know government's a little bit different, but there are some similar principles. And I think that's something we should be looking at. And I know I did throw out two names of statutorily based, but I want to make sure folks know that I do value those departments and think they are highly important in what they do and how they do with things. And I do think evaluations can happen at all levels. So that's kind of what I'm at. And if you have any questions, I'm willing to take them.
Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd. Any questions, comments, concerns, or compliments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Commissioner Lloyd,
Yes.
hey, are you buying coffee on those mornings?
For anyone not named Commissioner Wendling.
Darn, gosh darn it anyhow.
I'm just teasing. No,
I know, but
usually
I'm just teasing too.
Yeah, no. And I don't usually have to buy too much coffee because I think when I was in Rock Springs, no one really came to see me. They just talked to me because I was there after they bought their coffee. So I think I get out of it.
Too. That works too.
It's more like, hey, that guy's a commissioner. I think I'm going to go tell him what I think. I don't think they had any thought of me when they showed up to talk to me. It just, they had a cup of coffee. They were fired up and ready to roll.
Perfect.
All right, perfect.
Anything else? Excellent. Commissioner Wendling, you're on up.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate Lindsay Travis for her new position there at the library. I have to agree with Commissioner Lloyd. She'll be able to continue moving and thinking outside the box. She's been a huge part of helping Jason get where he's gotten the library, and I think she'll be able to continue to move in that direction. So it's a good appointment. Congratulations to Lindsay. Also, I'd like to congratulate Larry Lloyd on his retirement and wish him the best in the future as he begins a journey at this point in time in his life with new horizons and exciting times ahead of him. But I'd like to thank him also for everything he did for Sweetwater County, the events complex, and all the efforts he made in making sure that he tried to bring as much as he could to the county for economic development through the tourism and travel industry. So thank you, Larry Lloyd and his entire staff for making that happen, and wish him the best. Did attend the ambulance board meeting and Sweetwater Medics was there, as well as the hospital, as well as Castle Rock. I think there was a big focus basically to talk with Castle Rock as they were planning to move forward to meet with the county and plan for the future of ambulance. And I think the huge big part of the discussion was around basic, intermediate, and advanced services. There would be no level less than intermediate on any call is what Castle Rock was indicating. But, you know, based on the staffing and that type of thing, there would probably be paramedic level, which is advanced. So they really intend to provide a high level of care. Sweetwater Medics also indicated that until they hand the reins over to Castle Rock for Rock Springs, that there would be no level less than there'd be no basic. It would all be intermediate or even more so as it is presently advanced. So that was a great conversation and that type of thing. There was a question about what the board's role would be. And basically I told them that we as a commission would have a conversation closer to the time when services are turned over to Castle Rock after we sit with them and figure out what their components of the contract would be, and then we would have a conversation as a commission as to whether or not we continued on with the board or not. So I told them it was just too early, but if we would let them know as soon as possible, and also as usual, told them that if the commission move forward with a board, then we would have to do a resolution and update the old one based on some input from them as what they see themselves as. So it was a good board meeting. It was good to move forward and hear the things we did. I hope Commissioner Smith, those are some of the things that you're hearing on your end from Castle Rock as well. Also, I had the opportunity to attend the Republic of Korea Ambassador to Peace Medal Ceremony at the Rock Springs American Legion Post last week, and there were several Korean war vets that were either they were presented a medal, peace medal personally, or their families received a peace medal, and there was conversation about them and that type of thing. And of course, there were several medals that weren't given out that they're still looking for individuals to contact to give to their families or the individual vet. But it was a very, very honorable ceremony for those vets. Again, as always, what started this out was the Korean War to America was initially looked at as the Forgotten War. And when the Korean ministry visited the United States and visited different monuments, they couldn't figure out, well, what happened with the Korean War, and they were found out that it was listed through America as the Forgotten War. Korea couldn't believe it, so they're the ones that initiated finding out who all the Korean vets were living, as well as those that lost their lives over there. They initiated and are working on making sure that every Korean vet alive or their family, if they're deceased, receives this medal ceremony. I apologize for that dog in the background. But anyhow, that was a great ceremony. So other than that, been pretty quiet otherwise. And I don't think I need to report on the golf and tee times that have occurred and still will occur because the weather's that good down here. But with that, I'll stand for any commissions or any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And yeah, thanks for the update on golf and sunshine and all that stuff. That's awesome.
Also, I wasn't totally off the.
No, and
No, you weren't, Commissioner Tillman.
Caught, you've been caught.
There's not many beaches down here along the Virgin River, but I'll tell you what, there are golf courses.
And we see that you've gone from the voice disguise. Now you've gone fully into the witness protection program with the backlighting there. So he's in the
Yes.
shadows and we don't recognize his deep voice. So
There you go.
any questions for Commissioner Wendling? Excellent. Thank you. And I'm up next. Also, congratulations to Larry Lloyd and Candy Pendleton, one for leaving and one for staying. We appreciate both very much. I attended the hospital board meeting day after our last meeting, and a lot of things were discussed, but one thing that is of interest to us as the commission is that their cost of staffing has increased so much that it is starting to affect their days cash on hand. And while they've received about $3 million in funding to help with staffing and other issues, they cannot, by accounting purposes, count that towards their days cash on hand. And so that has affected that, which could in turn affect their bonding and things in the future. But just to make you aware that that is going on. So they've currently put a freeze on all of their capital expenses because of the cost of staffing. And as you've probably heard across the country, so many healthcare workers are leaving, especially in the nursing profession, and then coming back as travelers, where they can make 2, 3, and 4 times the amount of money that they made previously. And so even at Memorial Hospital, to have people leave and then turn around and hire them back through a company, a service that provides traveling workers, even though they may live here in Rock Springs or Green River or somewhere close. So difficult times for them as they continue to try to work through things. Thank you, everybody, for the good budget workshop we had last week. Do appreciate that. And we'll be attending Southwest Counseling Board meeting and also Department of Health Board meeting later this week, or next week, excuse me, end of the month, next week. And that is it for me. I will speak for Commissioner Shanefield. She sent me an email asking me to share that the specific purpose tax group will be meeting on Thursday at 5:30 to lay out a timeline and decide on next steps. They have had numerous meetings over the past couple of weeks, but nothing earth-shattering to report, she says. And I guess I could say the same about ambulance. So it's just progressing. As I mentioned in our intergovernmental meeting, nothing too much has changed, really just doing the dirty work, the footwork to try to get to be able to present to us a dollar amount and a proposal. So questions for myself or Commissioner Shanefield, which I probably can't answer for her. All right. We save the best for last with Commissioner Tolman.
Why, thank you, Chairman Smith.
You're welcome.
I'm honored.
Happy to help.
Just to follow up, I did get the letter sent to the governor for that we all signed for requesting air service support through ARPA. And I forwarded the letter to Ashley National Forest and shared it with the cities and the Chamber of Commerce's requesting Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area have a presence in the county to answer tourist questions. Just going down through the meetings, I attended federal agency update, received an update on the wild horse gathers, the sage grouse environmental impact statements. There will be 2 of those, one for the focal areas and one for the plan itself. The letter we sent was just to say we're interested in being a cooperator, but there will be 2 MOUs that will be need approval from this commission before we sign the actual MOUs to be a cooperator. So I just wanted to clarify that. Kimberly Foster from the BLM said, one thing that we should be aware of in changing things they're doing in the BLM, and I'm not sure I understand all of this entirely, is environmental justice and how they consider populations. One person in an area could count as an entire block of population for their projects and things, and how they consider population levels for projects and things. So I'm going to look into that some more. We'll be talking about it in the coalition meeting, but she said it's kind of alarming how they're kind of shifting the way they figure out these blocks and swing data issues. She talked about the hydrogen hub for storing carbon, but the issue is how to consider royalties from if you do carbon capture or carbon storage. How are the royalties figured in for the feds or us as a county? County fire, several meetings, we're looking at options. We've reviewed mutual aid agreements. We're still doing it, looking at budget options. So we will be coming back to the commission with some options. And I want to thank Commissioner Lloyd for assisting with that committee assignment. Went to Larry Lloyd's retirement party, it was great. And I wish to thank him for all of his hard years of work, and had a follow-up meeting with Candy. Thanks. Attended the strategic budget session. We finalized the outside entity request form pretty much. And we outlined budget sessions moving forward with elected officials and department heads, component units in February and March, and outside entities in April. Attended a sagebrush focal area Bureau of Land Management EIS scoping meeting. It was a Zoom meeting. Basically, the Biden administration is undoing everything that has been done in thousands of hours of cooperator works and 2 plans in 2014 and 19. They're basically starting over, addressing all the issues again, like we never did it. So it will affect oil and gas leasing. And locatable minerals, mostly it will affect them if they identify, they've already identified focal areas, but it hadn't legally been accepted as an opportunity to prohibit locatable minerals. So I don't know where that's going to go. Another hundreds of hours of work, I can see that. I attended an interesting hour-long American Petroleum Institute State of American Energy. I mentioned it earlier about the gas production in the United States was 15 billion barrels a day, and it took a big dip, and now it's back up to 13 billion barrels of gas and oil a day. The Permian Basin in Texas is now producing 5 billion barrels a day. It was interesting that because of the price of the good and the bad, you know, the bad comes that we're going to be more dependent on foreign oil, and we're paying higher prices at the pump, which is affecting all of us in our standard of living. But it did drive the price up enough to increase production. So good and the bad, I guess. They were not too happy about the Keystone Pipeline being shut down overnight and the loss of all the union jobs. So they were very vocal about what they thought of that. Attended the planning and zoning meeting, airport board meeting. Devin gave us an update last time. So I won't go into all the details. We're looking at receiving possibly $5 million additional dollars in federal funding. The issue they're facing right now, we will maybe be able to address it in that joint powers agreement, is when they have huge projects, they do not receive the money from the feds until after they submit the bills. And so they're left holding contractor checks for weeks, maybe in months. So I don't know if there's something we could do about that to help close that gap while they're waiting to receive the reimbursement. Yesterday, I went out and watched the BLM Wild Horse Gather. I will not comment on that, except that they need some horse specialists to help them figure out what they're doing. They gathered 117 yesterday, and they turned 60 stallions out today on 14 Mile Hill. It's just, we do need to control a population because healthy habitats equal healthy horses. So it's important that they maintain the population levels, but I have some concerns about some of the ways that it's being administered. But I did get to go out in the hills yesterday, so that was good. It was fun setting up the meeting with Randall Luthi. He was a Speaker of the House, and I'd worked with him in the legislature. And so it was fun to reconnect with him and see how excited he is to work with us as a county and get us plugged back into having a closer relationship with the governor's office on issues that affect our county. So that was fun. Ashland National Forest Cooperator meeting on Zoom on January 19th, and our coalition meets on the 20th. So those are my upcoming federal liaison meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Toman. Questions for Commissioner Toman?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Tolman,
Yes.
if they're gonna turn out stallions only.
No, they're going to add 60 mayors later.
Oh, they are. Okay, I was gonna say, if you want population control, just turn out 60 stallions and don't worry about anything else.
There you go.
I don't know. They work so hard to gather all these horses all week, and then they turn around and turn out 60 and then 60 more. It was just, why don't you just leave them alone? But I shouldn't get into that here. I'll take it up with the BLM. How about that?
Good luck. Yes, yeah, that's fair.
Uh,
Anything else? All right, thank you. I did neglect to mention that along with our discussion today about Jim Bridger, that I'll be meeting with Sharon Fain this evening. She's the vice president of Rocky Mountain Power here in Wyoming to discuss the Jim Bridger situation. So got an invitation to attend with some other folks here in the county. So we're doing that this evening as well. We are to the executive session portion of our program. And looks like we need Mr. McLean and Mr. Legursky. So we'll start with Mr. McLean, but till then, do need a couple minute break? No break? Okay, we'll start at 11:30, 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
point of order. We need a motion to go into executive session.
was that a motion?
I'll be willing to make it if you're ready for it.
I'm ready.
Okay, I'll make a motion to go into executive session for personnel, real estate. Do we need pre-decision on Commissioner Tillman?
no, no.
All right, for personnel and real estate only.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can we include legal in that discussion?
Personnel, real estate, and legal.
I did say legal.
Excellent. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
I
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We will start in about 3 minutes.